I'm Rebecca Kaykas-Wolff, a corporate marketer, salon curator, and your host. Today, I'm joined by my former colleague and very good friend, Roderick Jefferson, who is a globally recognized sales enablement leader, speaker, and author. Today's conversation is about the man behind the accolades. His story is one of resilience, evolution, and radical empathy, and I'm thrilled to have him as a guest. So Roderick, hello and thank you.
Hello. It's always good to see you, Rebecca.
We have known each other for some time when we first crossed paths when we both worked at Oracle, which was an amazing opportunity, very aggressive culture, learned a tremendous amount. And I remember, going through whiteboarding sessions because we had so many really aggressive, metrics-driven kind of sales things to achieve. And but since then, you've navigated a very powerful life shift, if you will, both internally and externally. And I appreciate so much your willingness to share some of your insights, the inspiration, the thinking that you walked away with, and because these stories are so incredibly personal. And with that, I'd love to explore what that transformation taught you, and share kind of some of those insights, how it reshaped your leadership, why empathy and authenticity have become your kind of beacons, and your most valuable tools, quite frankly, as a leader, kind of in this second phase for you. So with that, what I'd love to do is I'd love to hear your thoughts on a couple of kind of fun things, but what do you do and how would you describe it today? Like, think in terms of tweet length.
Ooh, okay, to make it really quick and succinct. Now I am a professional keynote speaker. I'm an author, and I'm out there literally talking about this topic quite a bit. And that is something that I call kind of stroke to success. And we'll get to that in a bit. But the reason that I'm out there is because I don't think there's enough that is now being put on the emphasis on EQ, where for me, it's IQ plus EQ plus AI. Without that, you've got a two-legged stool that's not really stable.
I love that. Can you, in your words, define what you mean by EQ?
Absolutely. To me, EQ is the piece of humanity that allows you to take people for where they are, as well as being able to infuse without judging, but also helping to learn. For me, to sum it up, I always say you can learn anywhere, you can achieve everywhere, but it requires an open mind to do both.
I love it. That kind of transitions really nicely into my next quick question, but kind of what's your personal North Star? Like when you think about that metric in your work or your life at this point?
Oh, legacy. Absolutely. But not the way I think a lot of people think of legacy. It's not about as you said earlier, it's not the accolades. It's not the books I've written. It's not the stages I've been on. It's not the logos I work for. It's literally, and I may sound a bit morbid, but my wife and I were having this conversation the other night. And I said, at my funeral, whenever it happens, I only have very simple rules. No one can talk about any logo or company I worked at. They can never talk about any accolade or any keynote they ever heard. I only want them to talk about one thing. How did they feel as they walked away from me, or I walked away from them, and what I left them with internally?
I love that. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. And quite frankly, even before, and we'll get into like part of the story that shaped this philosophy, I would say. But even before that, this is just kind of who you are. I think it's endemic to who you are as a person and as a leader. And we've been friends for so many years now. And I would say actual friends, which is amazing. So that kind of sounds like what your mantra might be. Yeah?
It is. Actually, my mantra is give to give.
I love that.
Not give to get, as most think about it. It's literally give to give. There's not a lot of expectation. There's not a lot of barriers around it. Doesn't always have to be, because rarely is it mutually equitable, especially as we get older in age and stage, as I call it, and also professionally. I realize there's probably more that I can do to help people than people can help me. I've been blessed to have an incredible Disneyland, ride. And for me, my mom always said, you can't move forward, not unless, but until you give. So my mantra has literally become my hashtag, give to give.
And especially in those times, I mean, I'm sure that you've witnessed this as well, but in times especially when it might be more difficult, sometimes giving is actually that tonic that you need to actually fulfill yourself too, while you're actually helping others.
It is. And, I'm one of those people that I get a lot of joy from watching people learn and grow and mature and iterate.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take a whole lot. It really doesn't. Again, we've known each other for a long time. And I would rather be the one behind the scenes now, kind of the Wizard of Oz that's moving the strings and such. I don't need the spotlight. I don't need to be seen. I don't need my name and brand put on everything. For me, the biggest joy I get is it's kind of like the when you go to a new company
Yep.
and you go through orientation, you go through onboarding, and then by the time it's done, that baby bird is now ready to leave the nest
Yep.
and move along. That's what I get joy out of.
Isn't that the best? Yesterday, I was on a call with a couple of MBA students from a program in India, and they asked me to contribute to an article. They're starting a publication. And it was a lovely experience. And I took a call with them as well. And we had this long conversation. And what was so incredibly amazing, and sometimes you take for granted the career you've had, the opportunities, the connections you've had, or just quite frankly, living in the culture. Like we all have different cultures and different backgrounds that contribute to our experiences, right? Successful or otherwise. And it was so incredibly gratifying to me that they were so inspired and they were so grateful, and that there was this connection, and I could actually understand some of the opportunities that they were faced with, and some of the concerns and challenges. And they were actually very interested in empathy in marketing, and empathy being a driver in business. And I actually think that other maybe countries are maybe a little bit further along in that empathetic journey than maybe we are sitting in Silicon Valley sometimes.
I would not say that empathy is a high priority
Right.
in
It's a
Silicon
different
Valley.
metric at the moment, and I really want to work to change that and to elevate that. But these my MBA students, they're all about it, and there's something really exciting happening in other markets that kind of gave me hope, and it was really fun to actually connect, and it I felt so much gratitude.
No, what I think is great out of that is the generational conversations and the sharing of tribal knowledge, and also the growth that happens on both sides, right? Whether it be the young millennials or the Gen X or whatever it may be, when we come to a point where we realize that we have more in common, which is generally the caring and the empathy and those things, than we have different, it changes the entire lens of the conversation. Now you're both open to being able to not only learn, but grow and also validate, but most importantly, appreciate what each brings.
I love it. Absolutely. And it's the most joyful part of that. Switching gears a little bit, and it kind of sets up some other items. What is your definition and how do you feel about transformation now?
Without transformation, you become a dinosaur and you die. It's that
Simply
important.
put.
It really is. I mean, that's as direct as I can be. The way that we used to do things, one, no longer exists, and secondly, definitely doesn't work anymore. So unless you want to become a dinosaur, and we know what happened to them, right, with with the extinction, you have to transform. And what does transformation mean? It means again being able to be open from learning anywhere and achieving everywhere. And what I mean by that is, I don't care if you're a CEO, I don't care if you're my gardener or the person that is the waiter or even the garbage collector. If you can teach me something, you can now help me transform because you're going to give me a different perspective, a different set of lenses. And then I get a chance to filter and be able to then internalize and take forward what worked for me and also how to make it my own. To me, that's transformation.
I'm pretty sure that you've always had that philosophy just by the kind of human that you are. But
Oh, wait a minute. Before we leave that one, I wasn't always this guy. Right. No, you met me as the young executive that thought that I knew it all and I had it all worked out. It took a lot of, and I'll say mistakes and missteps to humble me to get me to the where I am today. And you know what? I'm happy for each and every one of those because I truly believe we are the sum of all parts. And I wouldn't be the person that stands before you if I didn't.
Have those experiences. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
with that, let's talk about that, the major turning point. You had a pretty life altering health event, scare, I would dare say, and we were in contact during that time. That changed kind of everything for you. What I'm curious, before you get into the what happened, what did life and your perspective look like before that shift, before that happened? What were you prioritizing?
I was the typical corporate executive. I was flying around the world. I had the big org. I had, all of the trappings of corporate, I'll say. And I had the game of putting that mask on tight and being what I was supposed to be as an executive, quote unquote. The problem is it now began to erode things that I didn't realize were crumbling right underneath me. Right. And what I mean by that is I missed my daughter's eighth grade graduation. She's 35 now. She still reminds me. Trust me. I hear about that one all the time. I missed out on activities with both of my kids, whether it was football or it was dance or it was cheer. And I took that as, you know what? I'm providing and I'm protecting. This is what I'm supposed to do. Then I realized that I was missing out on a life. Here's a quick story. I had flown away and I remember it was to Monte Carlo for a conference. I flew back and I said, "Hey, great. Let's get pizza to the family." And they were like, "Whoa, Dad, it's Tuesday. Today is shake and bake day." Now, it may not seem like much, but what it showed me and told me was there's a whole life that's happening around me. And as I'm out there trying to provide for them, it was actually pulling me further away from them. And that meant that the growth, the maturations, the conversations, thank God for FaceTime. I was actually able to help with, reports and homework and things of that sort. But what missed was the intimacy of those connections that you just can't get to. You can verbalize and articulate it, but you just can't share it and feel it unless you're in the same room.
Arguably, I mean, I'm a mother and I've traveled. I remember missing the entire month of June one year, um, enabling around the world, like for a company, and carrying two laptops and doing conference calls at 3 a.m. because that's when I could talk to the teacher. And I'm curious though, like as a leader, are you seeing a shift in our environment now to actually help with what we always, call work-life balance, which is kind of a silly
Which
moniker,
which was a fallacy within
right? The
itself.
fallacy of the work-life balance. But I'm curious if you're actually seeing a difference.
I am, and I'm happy to say so
Good.
because I don't see people that are wearing that badge of courage,
It's not an honor, right? That badge of honor.
which, yeah, that badge of honor is gone. That's one. The other thing that I'm seeing is that people are caring more about health and wellness than they used to. I don't see as many executives that I talk to, friends, colleagues, clients, etc., that have gotten comfortable with living at that red line of stress that we all did, right? Now people are starting to listen to their bodies and their minds a little more. I mean, it could be also that, it's a different age and stage. We're getting older and we're seeing that. And then the younger millennials, I've got a 35 and 26-year-old child that I call my use cases, right? When I talk to them, they don't put as much credence or value in work like we did. For us, it was the basis. For them, it just kind of means to an end.
My oldest daughter is in an internship right now out of the country. And she's been posting videos of her riding horses, taking surfing lessons. She's doing the work too, but she's also living abundantly as she's experiencing this other culture. And I'm so proud of her for making that a priority too.
I love the fact that, and I'll say the kids, right? And I don't mean that derogatorily in any way. The kids don't live to work. They work so that they can live.
That said, what was your first honest realization after your health scare that made you shift and evolve? And are you comfortable explaining kind of how that process worked for you?
Absolutely. The thing that, that really caught my attention was I had a conversation with one of my trusted mentors, and he reminded me of two things. And that was one, corporate America inherently is here to make a profit. not friends. Never forget that. And he said, and why I say that is, if God forbid anything were to happen to you and you were to pass on and not make it, they would send a distribution check. They would send some lovely flowers. There'd be a number of comments on social media. Then they'd open another damn wreck, is what he said. Because business will continue to move on, right? Because we are now in an era of, and I hope we're moving out of it, of two of my least favorite words on the planet, and that is human capital. Because human capital inherently is dispensable and it's replaceable. And my goal in yourself is by doing things like this, it shows that it's the human piece that's important, not the capital piece.
Right. Especially, I would argue, with rapid technological advances, like creating that empathy, that creative thinking lever, all of those very human approaches even more important now. How did that shift and kind of mentality reshape your definition of success?
It changed me to where all the things I talked about earlier were important. After my experience, which I'll tell in a moment, it really laser focused into what I call my 4 F's. That's faith, family, friends, and fun. And it's really that last one too. That's what I realized was missing, because people were asking me, my daughter asked me, Dad, you do all this stuff. You help so many people. You work so much. You've been all around the world. What do you do just for you, and what do you do for fun? What is this fun you speak of, child? Right? And I laughed at it until I really sat introspectively by myself and I thought, yeah, what do you do for fun? I didn't even have a definition of fun, more or less an outlet for fun. And you know what? It came back to bite me.
So, do you sense that transformation, like empathy and fun and reconnecting with your human self, your family, has it's really become central to who you are and how you lead again? It's probably been a huge reminder, right? Can you talk a bit about your experience and how your very specific leadership approach and even humanistic approach has changed as a result of that, and kind of the advice that you would give maybe younger entrepreneurs or sales leaders, since you're in the sales leadership like role?
I think we've teased them enough. I'll tell them what happened. How about that? So I was on a business trip for a sales kickoff and was speaking the very next day and went out to dinner, and it was just a Wednesday like any other day until it wasn't. And so I woke up the next morning, and whenever I'm on the road, my wife and I, we connect calendars, what's going on today, those kind of things. And she said, something doesn't sound right. Doesn't sound like you. You're stuttering a little bit. And I was like, I'm fine. So she said, no, 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 you're not okay. We jumped on FaceTime. She said, say your ABCs. Ah, it's easy. A, P, Q, L, W, X, A. She said, count to 10. 1, 2, 12, 67. And my face wasn't drooping. Nothing was going on. But what it turned out to be was I actually had a stroke while I was asleep, an ischemic stroke. So I had a clot that started in my heart that floated up and landed of all places. Yes, God has a sense of humor. It landed in my speech center for a person that gets paid to speak. Right. And what it did was literally just shut down everything. Now, what I didn't know at the time is that 98% of sleep stroke victims never wake up. 98%. I am part of that 2% class. Yeah, I was awake, but here's where it got crazy. That was the day that I was flying back from LA. They flew me back here, mid stroke. First thing that the doctor said to my wife is, I don't know medically how he's alive. Between cabin pressure and an altitude and being mid stroke. And I was very close. So the human heart squeezes at about 65 to 60, 75%. When it gets down to around 20%, cardiac arrest hits and you are gone, out of here. I was at 22% heart function when they wheeled me into the ICU. So I spent weeks and weeks there. After that, I had to learn how to walk, how to talk. I lost the entire use of my left side. I mean, how do I do a button? How do I use a real spoon? it gave me a lot of time to reconsider, to your point, of who I was, how I was, what was important, and what had to be removed.
Can I actually say one thing as a like a trusted friend through that time and colleague? What I was so amazed and impressed about is that despite those challenges that you were physically dealing with, you were still the same accessible individual. And quite frankly, you reached out to your network to reconnect and discuss things with. And I was one of those individuals. And it was at a pretty rough time in my life, too. Totally different set of circumstances. But man, was it a reminder about what's important. And you find the people that you need and they need in those moments in time. And I'm just so grateful that I had that opportunity. But your resilience and your ability to push through says a lot about you and the type of person you are and the leadership qualities that you embody. And I'm curious if, like, we both, and you in particular, work in really high pressure, high like performance environments, right? And they are all metrics driven. How do you juxtapose what you've gone through with that reality now? And how do you encourage other people to have a good balance and listen to your body? And how do you do things differently in these high impact, high performance environments?
First of all, thank you for the kind words and the validation on that piece. You were an instrumental piece of that resiliency of me driving and pushing to fight through and get back. And you were part of that why of me having to get back. So thank you to you. What I did was a complete lifestyle change. One, I left corporate. I had to get out of that environment because to me staying there was literally the definition of insanity, of doing the same things and expecting a different outcome. I knew what I was working with and I knew what I signed up for, but I also knew that cognitively and emotionally and psychologically, I wasn't the same person and I didn't want to play that game anymore. So I left corporate and I went off and started my own consulting and keynote speaking company. And I had to do that because I realized one thing, to answer your question, why? Because I had gotten to a point to where what I did had overtaken who I was, as opposed to having the job just be, the role I play on TV, if you will. And I had to say, I'm now brought back, and there's a lot more, as you know. I saw my late mom. She told me what I needed to do to come back, and part of that was that I had to make changes, and I had to make changes not just for me, but for the people in my circle, my tribe, and also legacy for my family. If I wanted to stay here, if I went back and did the same thing, she said, "You're going to see me a lot sooner than you think you're going to." And that to me was a wake up call, right? And coming back, I promised myself that one, I would not miss any more important events. Secondly, that I would be a better listener than talker. And thirdly, that I was going to live by example through that resiliency and also share my experiences, my tips, my best practices. It's my lifelong goal and purpose is now to help other people. My thing, and I've said it to you before, I may not be able to make life easier for you, but if I can make it a little better, I can give you a smile today that you would not have gotten without us getting together. Mission accomplished. I've served my purpose for the day.
Isn't that amazing though, that especially through those hard transitions, and it can happen even if you don't have a monumental health scare or other personal like trauma, having trusted advisors and individuals kind of in your sphere that you can be vulnerable with is such a gift. And I'm curious your perspective, like how you encourage others, especially men, in leadership positions in particular, but especially men, to embrace their vulnerability and connection and view that as a strength instead of a hindrance. And are you seeing differences and changes, especially with kind of the work that you're doing now, which is highly consultative?
First of all, great question. And I'm going to go reverse. Yes, I'm seeing more. And now talking directly to the men, as I said earlier, our job is to provide and protect, but also you can't pour from an empty cup. If you're not okay and you're not fulfilled and you're not on balance, you can't share yourself with anyone. And by the way, the sharing piece, I had to go through a lot of counseling and therapy, and I am a huge proponent of therapy personally. Believe me, I've got all the bills to prove it, right? But in all seriousness, open up and talk to someone, whether it's a therapist that you don't know that you feel comfortable with or inside of your circle. Because as men, we're not taught to be vulnerable. We're not taught to be emotional. We're not even taught to be the slightest hint of what's considered weakness. To me, weak is trying to fight through something by yourself. It takes an enormous amount of strength to say, you know what? I'm not okay. And that's the other thing. We were never taught to say, I'm not okay. We'll have conversations, you and I, and you'll say, how are you doing today? And I'll go, I'm not all right now. And you know what? The old me, the old executive, I couldn't have said that. I would have been like, you know what? Life is good. I'm moving along. The lights are on. No checks bounce, all that crazy stuff. Now I have no problem being able to clearly articulate my feelings, not just my thoughts.
So incredibly important. And also, maybe I would add focusing on physical health, like not only mental health, absolutely important, but physical health, like reconnect with what made you happy, maybe even when you were a child, right? We used to always play games and sports, and it's harder to do that when you've got the pressures of adulthood. And I know that it's really difficult, especially in really aggressive fields like tech or maybe finance, others as well, obviously.
Thank you. I remember walking down hallways when I'm in hotels as I travel. The gym was just something that was in the hallway on the way down to my room. Where since my stroke, I've actually, and you've seen the metamorphosis, I've lost 40 pounds.
It feels good to feel good.
It does. And I firmly believe as an old athlete, the better you feel, the better you look, the better you feel, the better you
That's right.
that works in a number of areas in life right now.
It's a shame, though, that it takes trauma or these life altering experiences sometimes for us to reconnect with those kind of very basic healthy habits that make us our best versions of ourselves. But I think that the wisdom that leaders like you can share helps another generation of individuals. With that, you've also built your own brand that really has been values led. It's very much about your alignment. It's very authentic. Like switching gears a little bit because you've rebuilt your brand. What's kind of the biggest myth that you think that people might have about personal branding and even articulating a story like yours and with such a great career? What do you think the biggest myth is around personal branding, and what can people, or what maybe any advice that you have for people going through this kind of metamorphosis?
I'm laughing because I again just had a conversation similarly about this. And the answer to it is I can now, and I always now bring my entire self. We talk about that as though it's a misnomer, right? Before I could only talk about certain things, I keep things in the box. Now I've opened up, and I think in the last year, I have shared more personal things on social media than I ever have in my entire life. Why? Because one, it's my why. And I never want to forget what my why is, and what the true foundation and baseline is. And second, it's been done intentionally. I wanted my brand to transform, as we talked about earlier, to make myself more accessible, to be more human, to be more caring and empathetic, not to be that corporate exec or that author or that speaker, whatever it was. You know what? It was get to know the person of who I am, not just the person on LinkedIn around what I do. That was important. And I intentionally crafted and recrafted me to be more human now.
I do remember the days of LinkedIn is only for business, right? And Facebook is only for personal things, and so on and so forth. Like there's a wealth of information, but it's starting to feel better, like we can be our whole selves. And I think that that's a really powerful communications tool in and of itself. And I'm curious though, with that, because you've been intentional, do you track impact? Do you track the impact that you're having?
Absolutely. But my impact is different. It's not about metrics and measurement. It's literally about real conversations. It's taking those social media posts and stories and reels and turning those into conversations, right? Whereas LinkedIn used to be presentations, really. Now it's more about conversations. And more than anything, I'm looking at not just the number of conversations, but the types of conversations, because my measurement is quite simple. Is this conversation with a connection, or is it about connecting? And I'm having more of the latter.
So much more rewarding, I'm sure. So curious if you can offer one mindset shift to every emerging leader or even established leader that's listening today. What would you offer? What would it be?
It would be something I said earlier. Bring your IQ plus your EQ plus AI and use all three of those to be more human.
I love that. It's almost like you're pausing, reflecting as well, and reconnecting with all of the data points and making a great judgment call, maybe based on empathetic qualities rather than maybe a reactive data point.
Absolutely. It's not about the lagging indicators as we used to do with metrics, right? Now it's about how do you lead with empathy, with caring, with humanity, because those are literally the baseline, the foundation of any relationship, regardless of what label you put on it. Without those three components, it's useless and it's phony.
Authenticity,
It's
really, really
critical.
incredible. That's probably one of the cornerstones of personal brand building as well. And sometimes we think that our authentic selves might not be good enough, but that's precisely what I think might be the most compelling component, especially when you've got really heartfelt stories to share to make us better people.
Absolutely.
Do you have any final closing thoughts?
Thanks for that piece. I was hoping to come up with something that was going to be just earth shattering, but instead, I'm going to do exactly what you just said, and that is to be authentic. Don't become so busy building a life that you don't get a chance to enjoy the life that you've built with the people that really mean the most to you. Because we all know this is not a video game. There's no do-over. You get one shot at it. And when it's done, it is done. The most important thing now, as I'm getting older, as I said, it's about legacy. It's how, not how will I be remembered, because that's an ego statement. For me, it's what lasting impression and imprints can I make on people's journeys, their hearts, and their souls. And it takes all of those. And if you can do that, then you know what? A life well served.
Thank you. That's incredibly beautiful. And thank you for sharing the journey, your honesty and your heart, and reminding us all that empathy isn't really a soft skill only. It's actually a strategy. And I love the way that you think about it, and you've put it into practice and you're living the values. And I really appreciate that. And for everyone listening, here's your invitation to reflect on how you show up in hard moments and how empathy might be your biggest edge, and to really think about those situations where that could be applied. So if today's episode moved you, share your reflection using #LuminaryLens and let us know what resonated with you. And I so appreciate the time. And thank you so much for listening today.